Hi class, I'm Mr. Joseph. Even though I'm not there, here's my movie presentation for me telling you my movie scene of the World Series scene in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. Normally I would have a poster, my movie poster that I shared with you, but given the circumstances and I'm in a hotel room, I cannot have that here today. But so first question that I would like to ask myself is what's in the original movie of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey? And what's in the original movie is there's a meeting with all the acutes and all the chronics with with Nurse Ratched and all of her co-workers. And so what happens here is McMurphy wants the World Series to be played and switch the TV schedule, but Nurse Ratched was fully against McMurphy. They had tension with each other, but there was not really metaphoric meaning in that scene. So the only metaphorical meaning of that scene from the original version was really the blank TV screen from that movie and all of the acutes screaming at the television. And yeah, so basically what I'm trying to prove in my new scene is how a nonconformist can influence a group of individuals to go up against their fears and change society. So in my movie, what we did was we still have that meeting. We still have the big nurse, or Nurse Ratched, with all of her co-workers there, and with the chronics in the background. But what I changed was as the meeting's starting, and it's still narrated, not really narrated. Chief Bromden is still a key feature in mine, and it starts off with his perspective of what's going on in the meeting, and it turns to his whole foggy dream, kind of dream versus reality, and it shows McMurphy in mine. McMurphy dragging all of these acutes out of the hole that Nurse Ratched is keeping them in, as a metaphor, showing how he can influence his society in the ward against Nurse Ratched, for these guys to finally climb out of the hole, face their fears, face Nurse Ratched, and climb out. So another one, besides the fog, that was a big part, was Chief Bromden. So Chief Bromden, he is terrified of being an acute. He wants to stay in his disguise. He wants Nurse Ratched and all of the co-workers to believe that he is a chronic and he cannot communicate with other people and interact as the acutes can. And so what he does here is in the original version, he raises his hand. Yes, he raises his hand. McMurphy convinces him to raise his hand, and he does. But in my version, he's still in the corner, and he raises his hand, but he still acts as if he is a chronic, because he's still terrified of becoming chronic in the beginning of the scene. But finally, at the end of the scene, a major part, there's still little factors of what's going on in the scene, where he doesn't know where he is after the foggy dream and and one of the nurses have to wake him up. But at the end of the scene, which is I think one of the most important parts, is Chief Bromden, after he's raising his hand and really he realizes that McMurphy's creating change, and he notices that he's influencing these acutes to change their ways and face their fears. So at the end of the scene, the camera shows Chief Bromden was still with his arm raised. He turns around though, and he gets out of his disguise and he smiles, and he looks right at the camera, looks at the group of people instead of turning his face around in the beginning, because he realizes the importance of what McMurphy's doing as a nonconformist. Thanks, guys. Go Michael Thurber.